All right, we are continuing our series, Healthy Families Do. And we're intentional about it. We're taking time for it because families matter. As a matter of fact, society is built on the family. It rises and falls depending upon that. And God has given us a lot of instruction on what healthy families look like. So we've been spending time these last few weeks kind of looking at what God has said. We started with guarding our marriage, that, hey, families actually start with a man and woman. It doesn't start once you have a child. You're a family as soon as you are married. And you want to guard that and take care of that and put effort and time into it even when you have children. That relationship is primary. Last week we talked about parenting and breathing grace. And that, the goal is not getting them to behave, but to become. What do we want our children to become? And we talked about that last week. And you might say, well, that's great. I'm single. I don't have kids. But guess what? It doesn't matter today. You don't have to have kids. You can be single. You could be widowed. This doesn't matter at all. Because today, and I coined a new word for us. This is going to end up in the dictionary really soon, I think. Today, we're looking at childing. It's not in the dictionary, but it should be. And here's what childing is: behaving in a manner towards your parents that pleases God. That's what childing should be. Behaving in a manner towards your parents that pleases God. So you can tell there's an assumption in there. The assumption is you are a follower of Jesus. You're a follower of God. If you're not a follower of God, this may not mean anything to you. But I'm making an assumption. For most of us in the room, we're going, hey, I'm a follower of God. I want to do what's right. So when it comes to childing, that matters. And I want to do what's right as a child. So we're actually looking at honoring our parents. Honoring our parents. And, it comes from the Ten Commandments. Back in Exodus 20, as the nation of Israel left Egypt, they were finally freed from 400 years of captivity. They wandered around in the wilderness, and while they were out there, God gave them the Ten Commandments and said, this is the way I want you to live. And the first 4 commandments were all about their relationship with God. How you should respect God, how you honor God, how you relate to God, how you take time for God. First 4. The 5 through 10 are all about relationship with people. So the first 4 is my relationship with God. The next 6 are on my relationship with each other. And we know most of them. Do not lie, do not steal, do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not covet. There's a whole bunch of do nots. But there's one do. Honor your father and mother. Then you will live a long life, a long, full life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. I find it fascinating that is the only one of the 10 commandments that has a promise. I mean, it doesn't say if you keep the Sabbath, there's no promise behind that. Do not take the Lord's name in vain, there's no promise behind it. But there's a promise behind honor your father and mother, which for me, this command just raises all kinds of questions. All kinds of questions for me. How many of you have a child when they were growing up that was just full of questions? They just always ask questions. Their favorite question was, why? Why? Why do I have to go to bed? Why do I have to put away my toys? Why do I have to eat this? I mean, why? I had one of those. My son Keith was Mr. Question. He just always wanted to know why, or what are we going to do next? To this day, and he's going to be embarrassed when I tell you this, to this day, my wife and I get a phone call every day. What are we having for dinner tonight? What are we doing tonight? Every day, we get a question. Every day, 365 days of the year, I am not lying to you, 365 days a year, we get a question from him. I'm kind of like that when it comes to that command. Honor your father and mother. So we're going to try and unpack it together. I'm going to let you have all of my questions about it. But what does it mean to honor someone or something? I mean, just let's step back and go, how do we honor things? How do we honor people? So I went back to Webster, and Webster says it's to hold in high respect or great esteem. To hold in high respect or great esteem. So we can honor lots of things. We can honor trophies. We can honor people. We can honor situations. But what does it look like to hold my parents in high esteem and high respect? And why is this the only commandment with a promise? I don't get it at first. I mean, I would have thought if you honor God, if I follow God, if I make time for God, that would be the one that gets the promise. I think there's two assumptions we have to make with this, with that phrase. I think there's two big assumptions. And they're all based on our parents being followers of God. Because if you understand, this is the nation of Israel. They are all followers of God. It's the assumption. You're going to live your life honoring God, doing what God says, having a pleasing relationship with Him, and this is what it takes. So there's two assumptions from the Old Testament for this. The first is, my parents are followers of God. And if they are followers of God, that means my parents will want the best for me. They're going to love me well. They're going to do what God has told them to do in my life so I can honor them. Now, I'll just own it. Is that always true? No. No, it's not always true. There are exceptions. That's why I say it's the assumption that my parents are following God and they love me and want the best for me. Now, if you're not a follower of God, what I'm really sharing today doesn't impact you. I mean, it might be nice, it might be wise, but it may not have much meaning to you. But the assumption is my parents love me, and the assumption is my parents are following God. So, let me ask you this question. Do my parents need to earn my honor? I mean, they're following God and they're doing the best they can. Is there a level where, they have to get so high that they get my honor? I think the answer is no. I know the answer is no, because if you go back to the text, honor your father and mother. Then you will live a long, full life in the land of the Lord your God is giving you. There's nothing else but a statement. It's a command to us. It's an emphatic. We are to honor our parents, period. Not if they, or because they, or when they. We're just called to honor our parents. So I did some thinking about this week, about my own parents. And you know what? My parents, when I came along, I have to say, were really good parents. And the reason is, my sister and brother broke them in. They had 16 years of parenting before I came along. And they kind of got it together. And by the time I came along, well, first of all, they were older. By the time I hit my teen years, my dad was in his 50s. He'd lived a lot more life. My brother and sister, they got my parents when they were raw. My dad was coming out of World War II. He was a whole whopping 20. My mom was a whole whopping 18. They got married. They didn't have money. They didn't know what they were doing. And it was crazy. The stories my brother and sister tell me about my parents' parenting reflect nothing of my parents' parenting with me. We literally lived two different lives. They would tell stories about, we waited till Christmas Eve to get our Christmas tree. I found out later the reason was my dad couldn't afford to buy a Christmas tree, so he waited on the lot till the guy was going to close. And he said, I got $5, and you can give me a tree, or you can keep it and watch it die. When I came along, my dad owned his own company. We lived in the suburbs. Life was good. I didn't have any of those experiences, but my brother and sister had the same parents with less experience, less wisdom, less resources, and they probably did the best they could with what they had. I mean, that might be true for all of us. So as I tell that story, my purpose is for us to show grace to our parents. That they're not going to be perfect parents. Did my parents mess up with me? Occasionally. Did I mess up more often? Yes, absolutely. All right? But we're called to honor our parents. So I'm going to give you what successful childing looks like in my mind. What does it look like to be successful at it? I'm going to take you to Mark chapter 12, which seems to be a passage that has nothing to do with parenting. But I think it has everything to do with childing. So Jesus replied, this was after the Pharisees said, hey, which of the 10 commandments is the most important commandment? So the Pharisee was setting him up going, okay, which one's he going to pick? Because then we can argue with him about he chose the wrong one. You know, he didn't pick the one that mattered the most. So the Pharisees set him up and said, hey, which of the 10 commandments matters the most? And Jesus replied, the most important commandment is this. Listen, O Israel, the Lord our God is the one and only Lord. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. And the second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. No other commandment is greater than these. Neither of those commandments are in the 10 commandments. You realize that? Jesus says, here is the 2 most important commandments. They were looking for the 10 given to Moses. He goes, well, here's the 2. Because the other 10 actually are a reflection of these 2. Love God, love others. So, as a child, do my actions show love towards God? The way I act towards my parents, is it reflecting my love towards God? And as a child, do my actions show love to my parents? That's really the criteria we use for, am I doing well at childing? Hey, the way I respond and react to my parents, am I loving God through it? And am I loving my parents through it? It's kind of straightforward. But Jesus doesn't stop there. He goes on and gives us more information about this whole parenting thing. In Mark chapter 7, an earlier conversation with the same Pharisees. They're trying to just, find a reason to be angry with him and put him into prison. He's talking with them, and his disciples and Jesus were just finishing one of their journeys. And as they were on their journey, they picked some grain along the way because they were hungry. No big deal. But in the Pharisees' mind, it was a big deal because they didn't ceremonially wash their hands before they ate. And Jesus goes, you're kidding, right? This is what you're concerned about, that my disciples didn't ceremonially wash their hands before they ate because they were hungry. He says, you're all messed up. He goes, let me give you an example. And then he goes on with Mark 7. For instance, Moses gave you this law from God. Honor your father and mother, and anyone who speaks disrespectfully of father and mother must be put to death. Well, there's a little extremeness. But you say it's all right for people to say to their parents, sorry, I can't help you. For I have vowed to give to God what I would have given to you. In this way, you let them disregard their needy parents. So Jesus goes to the Pharisees and says, you know what? You don't honor the 10 commandments. You make other rules that actually go against the Ten Commandments, like this one. So, does this action show love towards God? Maybe. I mean, if they're actually putting aside things for God and giving it to God, maybe. But here's the catch. They don't have to give it to God until they're dead. So we don't know what happens when they die. As they're talking about this, going, hey, yeah, I have resources and I could care for my parents, but I'm not going to because, I've committed this to God someday. Well, maybe. Maybe they are showing their love to God. I don't know. But do their actions show love towards their parents? And I'd say that's an emphatic no. They for sure missed one of the two commandments that Jesus said, this is how you honor your father and mother. All right? So for us today, what does childing look like today? And I just have to tell you, it changes with time. It changes with time. It changes with your age. It changes with your situation and your parents. So we're going to start at the obvious part. Between the ages of 2 to 18, it looks like obedience. It looks like following the rules. Paul wrote it this way in Ephesians. Children, obey your parents because you belong to the Lord, for this is the right thing to do. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. Paul points it out. If you honor your father and mother, things will go well for you, and you will have a long life on the earth. So Paul has expanded that this was not just for the Israelites. It's for all of us who are followers of Jesus. Yeah, there was the Ten Commandments, but I'm telling you as followers of Jesus, obey your parents. And there's a promise, and he points out the promise so that life will go well because your parents are doing the best they can, trying to give you a life they can, and they're trying to honor God. So, if you're here, well, they've all left the room. I wish I could talk to them more. I'd have to go to the K5 room and go, hey, get it together. Obey your parents. All right? But it applies to middle school and high school too, doesn't it? And when we get to high school, we start thinking maybe my parents don't know the best for me anymore. Funny how that is. After my daughter went off to college, I got a lot smarter. She came back from college and went, wow, Dad got wise while I was away. It happens. It happens, right? But when we're in middle school and high school, we start not only asking the why questions, but we start thinking the answers aren't very good. And we start going, well, maybe I think my answer is better. And yet we're called to obedience. All right, between the ages of 18 and 50, it looks like respect and relationship between the ages of 18 and 50. Instead of giving you a text, I thought I'd give you what it looks like from Jesus' own actions.
Do whatever he tells you.
Fill these jars with water.
I'm not sure you heard her clearly, but we've run out of wine, not water. We are in a crisis, and I was led to understand you have a solution.
Fill these jars with water all the way to the brim.
Why?
You heard him. Start drawing water, quickly. Tell anyone you find to stop what they're doing and help.
Actually, that would be a terrible thing to behold.
My son.
Andrew. So that scene comes from John chapter 2. And it's recreated in The Chosen. They have taken, obviously, creative liberties, but they actually get all of the text, the conversation, right. So if you reread it, John chapter 2, the wedding at Cana, you'll find out that Jesus said, "It's not my time. It's not my time. It's not my time to start performing miracles. It's not my time to go public." Yet, because his mother asked him, even though it wasn't his time, he respected his mother's request. He went on and he made the most magnificent wine they have ever had at a wedding. But it was based out of respect. It was based out of love. As a matter of fact, he didn't want anyone to know that he made the wine. It wasn't a miracle that he was going, and let's let everybody see what I can do. But he respected his mom. He loved God, and he loved his mother. So there's been a phrase that's been around for quite a few years. You're probably familiar with it. Parental alienation. That's where kids get turned against one of their parents. It often happens in divorce and separations, but it happens in unhealthy marriages where one parent starts talking poorly about the other parent and tries to make a case that they were a bad parent, you shouldn't spend time with them, you shouldn't hang out with them, and the kids buy into it, and because of that, they stop honoring their parent. I watched that on a very personal level that I won't go into, but it happened in my own family, that there was parental alienation, and it was painful, and it was hard, and it was sad. In the last decade, there's a new phrase, a new situation that's come up. I had not heard of it before, but until very recently. But parent alienation is when a child refuses to have a relationship with a parent due to manipulation, such as conveying or exaggerating false information by the other parent. But now, there's grandparent alienation. This may be a new phrase. You may not have heard this phrase before, but I've done did a little research on it, went to a couple of psychology centers and read up on it. And here's what grandparent alienation is. When parents unreasonably refuse to allow grandparents to have a relationship with their grandchildren, and it's a form of elder abuse. Half of our states actually have laws now on the books about this being elder abuse, withholding your grandchildren. Now, I hadn't given this a lot of thought, but you know what? The last month has made me think about it a lot. That's Parker. That's my 4-week-old grandson. Now, I don't get to see him a lot because he's up in the cities. I've seen him 3 times in the last month. But the thought of my daughter and her husband telling me I can't see him ever is overwhelming. As I was looking at this, I read a story about a woman that experienced grandparent alienation. She was 48 years old. Her kids got married, they had a child, and the daughter-in-law decided that for whatever reason, Grandma and Grandpa were not allowed to interact with their grandson. But they relented and said, here's the deal. You can see him for 1 hour. But you have to talk to us, prearrange it, and work all the details out that it works on our schedule. So in the first 2.5 years of her grandson's life, she saw him 6 times When her grandson was 3, she was diagnosed with terminal cancer and was told she had 1 month to live, or not 1 year to live, sorry. And then her son realized what they had deprived of her, how they had been hurtful to her. But they'd missed already that time that she could have had with her grandchild, the memories she could have had. And it's a sad story. I mean, it's overwhelmingly sad. But as parents, if we deny the grandparents opportunities to be with their grandchildren, we are not honoring God, and we are not loving our parents. Now, are there exceptions to the rules? Of course there are. You might have parents that are actually very, very poor parents, and they might have been abusive, and they might have had addictive behaviors, and they might not be somebody that is safe for your child. There's always those possibilities. I'll own that. But if you think you're in that state, I want to encourage you to do one thing before you cut them off. Go to someone who is objective, that is not involved in the situation, that doesn't have you as a friend or your parents as a friend or a relationship with them, and talk to that third party and go, does this seem appropriate? Because it really is the extreme behavior when you have to do that. So parents, take advantage of the grandparents, because they can give you wonderful gifts of time and wisdom and their energy if you have that opportunity. Now let me go to the last one. Between the ages of 50 and 70. So now you're in my range, okay? Now you're talking about me. What does it look like for us to be childing? Well, it looks like respect in relationship and also care. And I add that understanding completely the Mark passage when Jesus was talking to the Pharisees. I want you to think about life in Israel, AD 30, all right? At that time, it was a subsistent lifestyle was common. So when I say subsistent lifestyle, that means you were farming, you were shepherding, you were fishing, you were doing carpentry, you were a merchant, you were a seamstress and sewing. But you worked with your hands for the most part, and day to day you tried to survive. They didn't have 401ks. They didn't have office gigs. All right? They didn't have a lot of the jobs we have today. You worked and worked and worked and worked until you couldn't work anymore. So if you were a fisherman, you fished until you literally couldn't bring in the nets anymore. If you were a farmer in the fields, you farmed until you could not do the plow anymore. So that's the reason Jesus makes this statement in Mark 7. For instance, Moses gave you this law from God. Honor your father and mother. And anyone who speaks disrespectfully of father or mother must be put to death. But you say it's right for people to say to their parents, sorry, I can't help you. That is completely wrong in the Jewish culture. It was assumed, it was a given that you took care of your parents when they could no longer provide for you, when they could no longer provide for each other. As a matter of fact, the New Testament talks a lot about it. Hey, in the widows, in your community as believers, make sure you as the church come alongside of them and take care of them. But you say, I can't help you. For I have vowed to give to God what I would have given to you. In this way, you let them disregard their needy parents. Taking care of aging parents was a given. All right? So as we are in our 50s to 70s, guess what? Many of us have parents that are in their 80s and 90s. And they no longer can do everything for themselves. And we have to start making decisions for them. I mean, I had my mother move here from Chicago. Did she really want to? Nope. But I knew that if she lived in that home, she was going to die sooner than she should have. So I moved her here. she never was really thrilled about that. But what really ticked her off was when I took away her keys to the car. I took away her freedom. And she never forgave me for that. I'm going to tell you that. It was a burning issue. But I'll say it was the loving thing to do, because when my mom was driving, she wouldn't know where she was or how to get home. It was getting dangerous. When you have strangers getting in the car to drive your mom home, it's not good. And in her mind, it didn't seem very loving. But I think it was the most loving thing I could have done for her. And then as she aged and progressed, my mom had cancer, and we decided to do hospice in our own home. That might not be the right call for everyone, but it seemed right for us. And I'll tell you, it was the best month with my mom. We got to just do life together again and share stories and have people come in and visit with her. And then she passed away. And now I am parentless. But I think about childing still, because I'm not off the hook. Because I still need to help my kids understand what it looks like to honor God and to love well, so that they can teach my grandson how to honor God and how to love well. All right? So the questions you have to wrestle with today, hardest ones. Do my actions show love towards God when I'm looking at my parents? When I was in high school, I had some of my friends. Their terms for their parents were awful. You know, my old man. I personally find that the most disrespectful phrase. It just bothers me to this day. The other one, my parental units. Can you think of a more demeaning, less emotionally engaged answer? My parental units will not let me go out tonight. Okay? Now, the words have changed over time, but how we talk about our parents, you know, to this day, when I talk about my mother and father, I try to make sure that I don't talk derogatorily about them. Did they have flaws? Did they make mistakes? Yes. But I don't need to point that out every time I'm in a conversation with someone else. I really want to honor their memory and honor them. So do my actions toward my parents show love to them? So last week we gave you homework. This week we're giving you homework again. Same scales, 1 to 10. And how am I doing at honoring my parents? Scale of 1 to 10, how am I doing at honoring my parents? So if you're the age 2 to 18, how are you doing at obeying your parents? If you're in middle school and high school, how's that going? Is it always a conflict every time they don't give you your way? Is it always a debate to wear them down till they give in? Or do you respect them and, man, I'm not sure I agree. I don't know if I really want to do this, but I'm going to obey. Ages 18 to 50. Do I show respect towards my parents? Do I have a relationship with them that shows love towards them? And everyone has to figure out what that looks like. You know, I can't tell you what it'll look like for each family here. But am I loving God well? And am I loving my parents well? And then age 50 to 75, it gets more complicated. Because not only respect and relationship, it's now care. Now you're called to care for your parents, and you're going to have to make hard decisions that some may go, I don't know if that was very loving. He took away her car keys. But do I love God? And do I love my parents? So your homework is to kind of wrestle with that and talk about that with your family and see how that's going. And maybe there's areas you need to work on. But my hope is, because we are followers of Jesus, that's the assumption, right? because we're followers of Jesus, I want to do this well. I want to do this well. Let's pray. God, thank you for the parents you have given us. In their weaknesses, in their flaws, you still gave us parents. Help us to love well, to honor, to respect, and to do the very best we can at childing in the coming weeks. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Hey, have a wonderful Mother's Day, and we'll see you back next week.